Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem.
Hi everyone, it's Beshvat again. And Baruch Hashem, as every year, I receive many pictures of beautiful tables full of the wonderful bounty that Ribbon Shalom has given us to enjoy. And many of those tables, unfortunately, have fruit that either are very problematic or that require very specific ways to check. And that's why tonight, Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to do something a little unusual, and we are just going to go through some of the main fruits that are used on Tu B'Shvat and show you how to check them. So let's start with dates. So the standard date is usually grown in Jordan or Eretz Yisrael. Unfortunately, they sometimes can have high levels of infestation. And what one needs to do is to first make sure that there are no scale bugs on the outside of the fruit. And then to open it up, remove the seed, and then stretch out the date as best as possible. And then putting it up against a light, either a light board or any bright light in your house. Just put it up from both sides to look directly underneath on both sides and to see if one sees any shadows. If one sees some sort of shadow, they should open the area in the date and look to see what it is. If it is not a symmetrical object, it might very well just be sugar. A lot of times older dates will develop sugar crystals under the skin. Also, one should look out for any sort of crumbing or it looks chewed up on the inside. That can also be an obvious sign of infestation. And now let's take a look at some of the possible infestations. So here you have to make sure to look at both sides of the date. So from the inside, the date looks beautiful, perfect. All we have to do, however, is flip it over, and on the right side you can see that there's something there. And we just peel back the skin and there's a giant worm underneath. You couldn't see it from the inside, you could only see it from the outside. As we take a quick look, and here it is. It's quite large, and even though it looked like we could see straight through from the inside, you pashut couldn't. You have to take it and look at it from the backside also in the light, and then you'll see shadows of what's directly under the peel. We also can have many worms on the inside as well. They're usually quite dried out. You can have beetles. Oftentimes the dates that are infested will be chewed up. You can see that white is all chewing with the worm in the center. Oftentimes they look like this. If you see one like this, you want to get rid of it. It's almost guaranteed to be infested. Also, if you see little brown droppings, that is a sign of infestation. Now the outside of the date can sometimes have scale bugs, scale insects. Here's a few different types. You should definitely check to see if you see something that is a oblong, white, brown, black spot. It should be removed. Once you remove it, you have no concern. Any of the other infestations, one should not use the date. So the next fruit we're going to take a look at is dried figs. Now dried figs are a truly problematic fruit. They unfortunately have an extremely high level of infestation, and unfortunately they're extremely difficult to check. As I like to tell people, especially with fresh figs, everything in a fig looks like a bug. When we're talking about dried figs, which is what most people are using on Tu B'Shvat, the inside is very dark brown and the bugs blend in perfectly. It is highly recommended to avoid using figs at all. If one does want to use the fig, so one should make sure on the outside, especially under the area of the stem or on the hole on the bottom, that one doesn't see any bugs stuck to the outside, any sort of worms or beetles, and then one should rinse it very well on the outside. Then one should open it up and clear out the inside, as we'll show you now. Let's take a look at some of the infestations and what the only way really to eat a fig will look like. So as you can see here, and I will shortly point it out with my pointer, but there is a worm in directly center of the fig, and it blends in very, very, very well with the fig itself. and is a very big problem. As to check figs, it takes a lot of time and effort that most people just don't have the time for, because all the worms blend in. And it's even worse in fresh figs. Basically everything in a fresh fig looks like a worm. Sometimes you'll have worms, sometimes you'll have beetles, sometimes you'll even have worms in the process of becoming beetles. I even have one picture of one of those that I'll show you soon. But the fact of the matter is, figs should be avoided. Here we have another worm, and here we have a beetle that is in the last stages of becoming a beetle. As you see here, the only real way to properly eat a fig is to take a fig, you use some sort of metal spoon or something, a knife, and you scrape out the entire inside. All you're really left with is the skin, and you just put it on a light board or up against a light from both sides, and you can then eat it. Make sure, again, it should be washed well on the outside, but then you could eat the skin. However, unfortunately, the inside is just too difficult to check, and it is highly recommended to avoid eating. Now let's talk about some strawberry byproducts. Fresh strawberries and dried strawberries are well known as problematic fruits. I recommend highly that one should not use them unless one is a trained kashrus professional that knows how to check for the various bugs that could be in strawberries, including some that are even internal infestations. And again, I highly only recommend professionals checking strawberries. In Eretz Yisrael, they sell these very highly processed, very unhealthy, full of food coloring and sugar, candied strawberries. These would have the same issues as regular strawberries, most likely, and I highly recommend people avoid this product. Now let's talk about apricots. Apricots, there are two types of apricots that you'll find in the market. The regular yellowish, orangish apricot, which is very, very easy to check. You just open it up lengthwise, it comes apart very easily. You put it up in the light, and you see if you see any sort of worms on the inside, any red spots on the inside that might be worms. Any red spots on the outside are not a concern. It's usually just burnt from the sun. The other type of apricot that is found in the market, especially in Israel, is Uzbekistani apricots. They are a very dark color and are very, very hard to check, and one should avoid using them. Then we have naturally dried fruits. We have here pineapple and mango. There are a bunch on the market. Generally speaking, they're relatively clean. However, sometimes they will get an infestation of mites. To check that, one should just bang them on a black surface. For instance, I have a black bag here, and you just take them and you bang them, and you'll probably see some white crumbs or some yellow crumbs come off. What you're looking for is anything that's moving. If there's something moving, one shouldn't use that particular batch because those mites are not very easy to get off. If you don't see anything, you don't have to have any concern. With dried fruits and fruit leather, one has to be very careful because since they're somewhat sticky, sometimes you'll have flies or ants or beetles that get stuck to the outside. You just want to make sure to look it over quickly, give it a once over before you eat it. The same is going to go for most of the candied fruits that are generally considered clean, but because they're sticky, one should make sure to be careful that nothing is stuck on them. Other fruits that one should generally avoid, one should very much stay away from strawberries, mulberries, blackberries, as they are highly infested and nearly impossible to clean. One should definitely not use them. Blueberries, beintayin in Eretz Yisrael, we recommend they are washed. Either you remove the crown on top or you rinse it and you scrub with a brush, like a toothbrush, under the flaps of the crown on top of the blueberry. Recently, there have been blueberries that have been coming into the United States that are just simply very hard to clean. No matter how hard people have tried, they have not been able to get them sufficiently clean. So people should definitely avoid blueberries unless they are cleaned by somebody who is trained in bedikas tolayim. Dried prunes are generally quite clean. One should check internally 10% just to make sure there is no internal infestation. And again, one should be very careful that nothing is sticking on them as they are quite sticky. Last but not least, we're going to be discussing charuv or carib. They are generally highly infested because they're usually harvested after the carob has fallen off the tree and has been sitting on the floor for a while. One should make sure there are no holes and should wash and rinse them carefully on the outside. Then one should cut 2 centimeter long pieces, and one should cut them open and check internally for any sort of webbing or crumbing or any sort of bugs. And if one does not find those, they can consume those pieces. But again, one should be very careful around areas that have had holes. And here we'll take a quick look at what you might find in a carob. Here you see some crumbing on the inside of the carob. Here we can see some holes along the length of the carob. And finally, we can see that the carob has been eaten on the outside. All of these are clear signs of infestation. And now that we've learned how to check our various fruits for Tu B'Shvat, we should all enjoy our Tu B'Shvat Sudas and thank Hashem for the endless bounty of wonderful fruits that He's given us to eat. And we should be zoiche to use that wonderful bounty the way the Ribbon Shalom intended.
Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem.